So one of the most common points of contention when it comes to the Pokemon Go community is whether or not you should ever purify a Shadow Pokemon. And I do think this is going to be a bit of a divisive video, and in many cases, even myself would disagree with some of the things that I'm going to say, but I do want to talk about this topic because recently I've been seeing a lot of people posting some purified Shundos in their collection, and there tends to be a lot of mixed reactions. So yeah, let's talk about this. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Alright, what's happening everyone? Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon Go video. I hope your day is going really well, and let's get right into it. So if you've ever been on the Pokemon Go subreddit or the Sylph Road subreddit, occasionally you will see a post of someone bragging about a Shundo that they just got, but it happens to be a Shundo that they got through purification. When you get a shiny Shadow Pokemon, whether through a Team Go Rocket leader battle or through a raid battle, you do have the option to purify it to increase the IVs. However, you will lose out on the shadow damage bonus, so a lot of players tend to say that you should never purify a Shadow, even if it could land you a 100% IV. Now, truth be told, I tend to agree with that sentiment because when it comes to Shadow Pokemon, they can be a game changer, especially when it comes to Shadow Legendaries. Like for example, if you were to have a high IV Shadow Mewtwo, it's pretty much going to be one of your best damage dealers in your collection. The same goes for other legendary Pokemon like Shadow Groudon and Shadow Kyogre, but this could also apply to non-legendary Pokemon like I would say Dragonite. That is a really powerful Shadow Pokemon. Same with Tyranitar, that is often considered a top tier raid attacker. But in some cases, purifying is totally going to be okay. I think there are some notable examples that Niantic has released specifically around purification. The one that I can think of is, of course, the Apex Shadow Ho-Oh and Apex Shadow Lugia. Both of these Pokemon actually get considerable bonuses when you purify them, where it's essentially going to make up for the lost Shadow bonus. Now, ultimately, I know for some players it's just going to come down to what they prioritize more. If they care about raid damage, then they will for sure never purify their Shadow Pokemon. If they care about optimization and probably the most efficient way to play the game, yeah, they're going to keep it as Shadow. But some players just simply want Shundos. Some people just simply want high IV Shinies, and for them, they do not care if it's going to be purified. They do not care about the shadow damage bonus. All they care about is getting those Shundos. And to those players, I think, yeah, if you want to purify, let's say a shiny Shadow Mewtwo because it could push it over to 100% IVs, then I think that's all fair game. It's really dependent on each player. I think it's not necessarily the right thing to just criticize a player simply for purifying a Pokemon. Maybe they have their any different reasons, but I will say the general consensus has always been to never purify a Shadow Pokemon, and the reason for that is simply because Shadow Pokemon deal more damage. So in a gameplay point of view, keeping it Shadow is always going to be a lot more beneficial. I've mentioned this many times before, but Shadow Pokemon actually deals so much more damage that a 0% IV Shadow Pokemon will deal more damage than a 100% IV purified version of that Pokemon. If you were to have two Shadow Mewtwo's, for example, let's say one of them is 0% IVs or maybe something really low IVs, but you have yourself a purified 100% IV Mewtwo, that 0% IV Shadow Mewtwo is still going to deal more damage in a head-to-head compared to the purified Mewtwo. That is something that a lot of players just simply do not realize. Even though you're getting yourself additional IVs for purifying that Pokemon, you're actually still gimping that Pokemon by purifying it. Simply put, I think because of that one little known fact, a lot of players opt to never purify their Shadow Pokemon, and there's going to be players out there who will criticize others for purifying their Shadow Pokemon because they're basically saying you do not know the game. You do not realize that Shadow Pokemon are going to be the better version of that Pokemon compared to a purified version. But to that, I will say, I think the community should ease off just a little bit because there are going to be certain Pokemon who are going to be useless regardless. Like, you would never use them in raids even as a Shadow. And I think for those Pokemon, it's totally fair game to just purify them. I mean, there's going to be certain special researches, field research tasks that's going to involve you purifying Pokemon. And for a lot of those tasks, yeah, it's totally okay to just purify a Pokemon so that you can get those tasks completed. And there's going to be certain other cases where even though you have a high IV Shadow version of it, you just simply know you have better counters. You're never going to use it, so you might as well just purify it to get yourself the Shundo. That is actually something that I've personally done, because I actually got myself a high IV Shadow Dratini, a shiny Shadow Dratini, and I knew that if I were to purify it, it would become a Hundo, or a Shundo. So I just did it, because even though I know a shiny Shadow Dragonite is going to deal more damage than a purified Dragonite, I would never use the Shadow Dragonite to begin with, because I have so many really solid Dragon counters that are going to be better than that Shadow Dragonite. So I just simply decided to purify it for that reason, because I'm never going to use it anyway as a Shadow. Might as well purify it and get myself a Shundo. It's actually my second Shundo Dragonite. I have a purified shiny Shadow, I have a purified Shundo Dragonite, as well as a regular Shundo Dragonite, which I got from a community day. So I think for me, that was a win. Because, again, I'm never going to use that Dragonite. Why bother keeping it Shadow and have it be like 89, well, I think it was like 91% IVs? Might as well purify it and get myself a Shundo. I think that was probably the better move. And I think those cases are definitely going to be a lot more common. There's going to be people out there who will purify, let's say, like a shiny Shadow, I don't know, Scyther. It's going to make it a Shundo. That's totally fine. And in those cases, it's probably better as a Mega Evolution anyway, so there's no reason for you to keep it as a Shadow. Even for PvP, you're never going to use a Shadow Scyther or Scizor, so yeah, purify it. I think that's going to make it a much more collectible item. I think the only exception where you will want to avoid purifying a Shadow Pokemon is always going to be legendaries or top tier attackers. For example, Raikou, Groudon, and Kyogre, like I mentioned. Mewtwo is probably the biggest one. If they ever release Rayquaza as a Shadow, that's definitely one you're going to want to keep as a Shadow. Those are probably the only cases where I would suggest never purifying it, but for pretty much everything else, it's totally fine. That's my personal opinion on it. Ultimately, what I think it's always going to come down to is, what do you want out of Pokemon Go? What is it that you're specifically looking for when it comes to playing this game? Are you someone who wants to raid the most efficiently? You want to be able to take on pretty much any raid boss and you want to have the best collection? Or are you someone who just simply wants Shundos? You just want high IV Shinies. You're just more about the collection aspect of it. And for raid battles, you know that it doesn't really matter what you bring, because as long as you bring enough players, like, you're always going to take it down. Like, what is it exactly that you feel like is more important to you when it comes to Pokemon Go? I think that's what you really need to consider when it comes to purifying Pokemon, because it is still always going to be an investment either way. Purifying Pokemon does require quite a bit of Stardust as well as candies, but also keeping it Shadow and powering it up requires an insane amount of Stardust and candies, so it's really up to you. But I will say, my one rule is always going to be around Shadow Legendaries. You should probably be very hesitant when it comes to purifying those, but for everything else, I will say it's all fair game. You might as well do it. So yeah, I guess that's really all I have to say on the topic. I feel like for a lot of people online, they tend to just default to criticizing people for purifying a Pokemon to get themselves a Shundo. I think they need to kind of take a second look at it and just really think about why players would purify a Shadow Pokemon to begin with, and just celebrate it. Just congratulate them for getting a Shundo. I know it's going to be a very easy tendency for people to kind of gatekeep and feel elitist towards Pokemon Go. And I totally understand that, because I myself have kind of felt that way in the past when it came to Shadow Mewtwo in particular. But I think for everyone, just keep their own rules. If you're someone who is choosing never to purify Shadow Pokemon, totally understandable, but don't bring that standard to other people. I guess that's kind of my message. But yeah, that's essentially going to be it. Definitely share your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below. What are your opinions regarding purifying Shadow Pokemon? Do you feel like it's totally okay to purify pretty much any Shadow Pokemon? Or do you feel like it's only okay for certain Pokemon, but not necessarily others? Definitely share all of your thoughts in the comment section down below, and yeah, let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that notification bell so you know exactly when I upload videos. And real quick, Let me give a shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Jinsula channel, the best way you can do that is going to be by joining my Patreon. And if you decide to become a paid Patreon member, I'm going to add you to my Pokemon Go friends list. That means for stuff like remote raids, the friendship system, opening and sending gifts, different things like that. If you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. I'll put a link to it in the description below. And if you want to support my channel in a completely different way, you could do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms you see right now on the bottom of your screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow, and that'll be a huge help to my channel. And you'll have access to some exclusive content. You'll be able to keep up with my daily life. With all that said, that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself today, and I'll catch you all later.